This is the Housemade Podcast. We're your hosts, John Vieira and Nick Bobbin. We're here to cover your questions about home bartending, so let's get into it.
So today we're going to talk about tasting for noobs.
Yeah, I am a noob, so I'm here.
I am also a noob.
I'm here to learn with the rest of you, I guess.
Okay, so I guess let's start talking about tasting just in general, right? Because that's kind of what we want to cover is when you're reading these tasting notes, is what they call them. It's a list of flavors.
Yeah, so essentially if you went to the liquor store, found a cool bottle you had never tried before, and then maybe you look it up online or you use like Distiller or one of those apps, something like that where they'll give you tasting notes, right? Mm-hmm. Or maybe even sometimes on the bottle they'll give you tasting notes. So it's kind of like how do we get from point A to point B
Gotcha.
with our tasting?
How do you translate it? Okay,
Yeah.
So I think to start out, just to give everybody kind of an overview, this is a very subjective kind of experience, right? There's some objectivity to it. Like we can say that it's sweet, and for the most part, you're going to think sweet is a little bit different from somebody else's sweet, but we can all agree on that it was at least some level of sweet. I heard a better analogy actually too just today. They were talking about a lot of science between color pigments. So I can look at something red and you can look at something red, and pretty much everybody has agreed that they're kind of going to be different pigments of red. But if I said, hey, go grab that red bottle off the shelf, you probably know which one to grab.
Right. Yeah, there's a huge variance with, I think, the way that people perceive colors. So visually, it makes you wonder, too, if, like, somebody's version of red that they see is, like, what you would consider purple. But they've just, since the day where they were born, they were told by everyone else that was red.
Totally. Well, that's kind of what tasting's like, too.
Super weird to think about.
But so tasting is usually broken up into three major categories, right? So you have the nose, you have the body, and then you have the finish. Or you could call it taste instead of body. So nose, taste, and finish. And so the nose is literally what it sounds like. It's what you're smelling, right? And the taste is such as it's explanatory. And then the finish is how it continues to kind of like linger into your palate.
Right. And it's crazy how much smell plays into your taste.
Well, it's like 90%, isn't it?
It's massive. I don't know what percentage it is, but I was kind of looking into it a while back. I've always had a really bad sense of smell, so therefore my sense of taste is quite bad as well. But I was looking into it, and there's a little fun experiment that people will do where they'll plug their nose and they'll close their eyes so they don't know what's going on, and they'll be fed essentially a little piece of apple and a little piece of onion.
Yeah, I've heard this too.
And without the sense of smell, the textures are almost identical, and they can't perceive like which one is which is really interesting. So
we should have done that. That would have been awesome to do.
So a really interesting way to look at something like when you're sick, you know how like, okay, so say you have the flu, and it's common to say, oh, well, I'm sick, so I can't taste anything. Actually, what you're saying is I'm sick, so I can only taste things. I do not have my sense of smell at play, which is why everything seems so bland.
Totally.
Because just your taste buds, they just really can't get the job done. So, yeah, smell goes into it like crazy, which is why tasting things like whiskey or other spirits, there's such a big emphasis on the nose, right? And proper technique, which hopefully you can shed a little light on for me as well.
Yeah, so I guess just to back up, when you're very new to this whole tasting thing, because there's a lot of snobbery that goes on out there. If you grab something like wine or whiskey or whatever to taste it, and you taste it and you go, it tastes like whiskey. Like, there's nothing wrong with that at all. Like, that's where everybody starts. What they're doing with these tasting notes is trying to describe the specifics about it, and it's very much subjective, right? So it's very much based on your past personal experiences, which is why everybody is going to taste something, and there will be slightly different variations on it. Really common ones with whiskey are like caramel and tobacco and cherry and like these type of things, but you can also get fucking banana and all this burnt leather and campfire and stuff like that. And especially when we're starting out, I would recommend that when you read these tasting notes and you taste some of this whiskey and you're like, wow, this banana, that's weird. Go eat a fucking banana.
Yeah.
Go try it. Or if you don't know what it is, some weird, obscure flower, like head down to Albertsons or Whole Foods or anywhere and just go purchase that and stick it in your mouth.
Yeah, it's kind of like anything else, right? Like you have to practice.
Yeah.
Like if you want to be good at smelling.
It doesn't come overnight, yeah.
Yeah, you have to. What I read was that anytime that you eat anything throughout the day, if you make yourself breakfast or you go to a restaurant or whatever, is to like intensely smell what you're about to eat, and because you'll associate those things, like you'll kind of create those pathways in your brain, which will make these things easier to recall later on when you're just blind taste tests, things like that.
So like leather, for example. Don't go stick a wallet in your mouth, but like you can get the sense of the taste from the smell, right? So when you're in a department store, fucking stick your nose up on a wallet, and if it's real genuine leather, smell it.
Yeah,
because that's a big note that always comes through with everything. Same with like wood. Like when you're in the hardware store, go to the hardwood section and stick your nose on shit like walnut and oak and stuff like that, because that's the type of things that come through and they're descriptors. And also with these like descriptive properties, don't just stop at the word. So like there's lots of different kinds of oak, right? There's different species. You can burn it, you can char it, you could freshly cut it. It could be soggy and wet. It's all going to have a different...
is kind of where like that whole concept of different staves comes in. Like we were talking about on the last episode about the Maker's Mark barrel program. These staves, or these entire barrels technically, are made from either American oak or French oak, things like that, and different charring methods and cooking methods, infrared, all these different ways that you can create a different
flavor
smell
profile
and flavor profile, essentially. Yeah.
Oh, 100%. So backing up also to answer your thing about tasting spirits, for example, the best way to do it is to bring it up to your face, up to your nose, with your mouth actually open, and bring it all the way up until it starts to get really intense, and then back it right off, because that alcohol, you don't want to opening your mouth opens your nasal cavities as well, and it allows those fumes to continuously pass through. So if you have your mouth closed and you stick it up there, all that intense alcohol is going to get stuck in your nasal passage, and it'll burn your receptors.
Right. Yeah. So all the vapors, especially on high proof stuff, you're talking like cask strength whiskeys and stuff like that. It'll roast the inside of your nasal cavity.
So as you bring it up and you breathe in, you want to breathe in equally with your mouth and your nose at the same time. And what you're doing is you're allowing that alcohol to pass through.
Gotcha.
So that's a big one. And man, when you're tasting something, take your time and go slow. That's the biggest thing. And just smell it. Take a big sniff. Take another one. Take another one. And just think about your own experience and describe it for yourself. Because a tasting note essentially is there to benefit you. And it has everything to do with you.
Well, and also keep in mind the situation that you're in, right? So say you sat down with a friend and you're cracking open some bottles and you wanted to taste and compare and contrast. Well, that's great. However, if you just ate like a really big meal, a lot of bold flavors, things like onion and stuff like that.
It's going to taste different.
It is going to taste different, which is why certain things pair beautifully with other things. But if you were trying to, completely subjectively analyze something, go off of tasting notes, things like that, your taste perception might be a little bit skewed because of that. And I also read that you're supposed to drink a lot of water just throughout tasting, just to help neutralize your palate. And obviously you could eat something relatively flavorless.
Yeah, bread's a good one too.
Yeah.
Also, I've heard of coffee as well, especially for the nose, having coffee beans around to help re-neutralize.
They do that
where you're
for
at.
Smelling cologne as well. Have you ever seen that? They have a little dish of
coffee beans
Coffee
around.
beans, yeah.
Yeah, and it's just bringing you back to square one where you start.
Yeah,
that way,
your control group, if you will.
Yeah, that way you're not like putting the whiskey and then that lingering of that whiskey you just had and then going to another whiskey. Now you're going to start blending the two together. So it'll be different than if you come revisit something on its own later.
Gotcha.
But yeah,
and
definitely
palate fatigue is definitely like a real thing, and it sets in quick. So back to your point of taking your time, it's definitely important to not get in a big rush, and also taste small amounts of things. Like, I'm not saying you shouldn't get drunk while you're tasting, but if you're trying to taste multiple different things, you don't want to drink a whole big glass of the first thing and then move on. You're going to start to get a little bit drunk. Your taste buds are going to start to get desensitized to it. So
yeah, definitely. So something that I do when I taste a lot of stuff is I actually spit. So
there's like a whole art to that.
Yeah,
supposedly I don't know anything about it, but
I don't either, to be honest with you. But I'll taste it because as you want to nose it and get a lot of smell. That's where a lot of your flavor comes from. So that's your first category is the nose. Your second's the taste. And so with almost any spirit, it's always recommended that you take and just swallow the first one. Just spit it straight back out. But don't try to sit there and analyze it. Put it on your palate, let it go, and then come back, take an actual little sip of the spirit that you're trying, roll it around your mouth, let it get on all sides, front and back. You have quite a bit of saliva in there. It'll help actually open it up too, I think, from like a dilution standpoint.
I was reading, I'd like to read more on it because I didn't get a whole bunch of info, but I thought it was interesting, this concept of the tongue zones, like we've always been taught, like in school and stuff like that.
Yeah, I was looking at that too. Okay, so for you guys that don't know, the tongue zones is this like early 1900s map of your tongue and the 5 basic flavors.
Well, and back then it was only 4.
True. Yeah, back then it was like sweet, salty, bitter, and sour.
Yep, those are the 4.
And now
now we have umami, which is like the savory.
Yeah, which is or described as meaty. And the tongue map pretty much said that like certain areas of your tongue can taste certain things better, which ultimately I think has been debunked as a myth.
From what I can tell without looking a whole bunch into it, I think it has. What it sounds to me like is that there maybe are certain regions of your tongue that are
more receptive than
a little bit more receptive to certain flavor styles. But from what I can understand, the taste buds, which are not only on the surface of your tongue, by the way, which was once believed, apparently you're talking about the roof of your mouth as well as like even into your throat slightly. But each taste bud is capable of receiving each flavor type, I guess. And from what this said, all taste buds across the board are able to taste the umami flavor, which is why it's so impactful. Because if there is any sort of zone at play, in reality, supposedly this umami one just spans the entire map.
Gotcha.
So, and I don't know details on how much of that was debunked or whatever, but just saw an article super quickly, and I thought it was really interesting because I was trying to remember, like, is it the tip that's for like, sweet or salty? I couldn't remember where the zones actually were, and I just stumbled upon this article that was like, well, actually, they don't exist.
Gotcha. Which I think I would be on board with what they're saying. So after you've washed this whiskey or gin or whatever wine that you're tasting, if you got a lot to do, spit it out. And now this will be your finish, right? It's how it continues to interact with your palate afterwards. A lot of hardcore like whiskey enthusiasts say don't spit it, that you need to swallow it because it will actually continue to interact with your esophagus. So as you breathing in and out now, you're gonna get more with that long finish at the end.
I mean, that makes sense, I guess.
I think it's also notable to say it's also more than just taste too, right? We're not only talking about taste when you're talking about these tasting notes and descriptors. We're also talking about like mouth feel. So a common one is like oily, right?
Yeah.
And a body. So they talk about a big body, so big, jammy, meaty, kind of flavorful, thick liquid, as opposed to like a light body that's very dainty, doesn't stick around, it's closer to water, you know?
Okay.
Stuff like that. Those are part of the descriptors as well.
So I think just to help get this in my head a little bit better, there is a video component to this, by the way. If you're just listening to the podcast, go do that. I'm going to briefly go grab some booze and a couple glasses, and I'll have you walk me through what you would do if you were sitting down and just trying to taste something.
I think it's a great idea.
So I'll be right back.
So while he's grabbing that stuff, tasting 101. I'm just trying to think about the things that I didn't know. So how to taste is 1. 2 is what the tasting components are. So we got the nose, we got the taste or the mouth, and then we got the finish. Everything is pretty cross-platformed. I believe all this kind of started with wine tasting, especially with whiskeys. It probably developed quite a bit more, and especially Scotch. And I guess with those tasting flavors, especially when you read about Scotches and stuff from overseas, keep in mind that you might not know what some of the things are that they're describing. And that's because they have different candies and just different food over there in general, and an entirely different human experience to be able to describe what they're actually tasting. So one of the bigger takeaways I think on this one is it's very subjective, and you're only going to get good at it if you do it a lot and you want to learn. So okay, so right now we're going to taste the Yellowstone Select.
Yeah, just pulled this off of my little shelf back there. I've obviously tasted this many times, but the point of this is I want to try to put myself in the zone and do the right steps in the right order and see if somebody with my lack of a palate can maybe start to pick up on some of this stuff, and maybe it'll help some of you guys at home as well.
I will like to note that I'm not going to be the best taster today. I slept like a jackass last night and snored my face off. And so the roof of my mouth is all fucking chapped and sore, and my left nostril is a little bit plugged.
We also drank a lot of ridiculous shit yesterday.
Oh, yeah. Well, we did a whole bunch of, slammed a ton of content out.
Yeah, this content journey that we're on has led us to a lot of drink making, experimenting, and testing.
Okay, so before, we've already started this experience, I could start to smell the heat off of this bottle as soon as you opened and poured it, right?
I was gonna say I can actually.
You're already starting to get.
I'm getting
a little bit.
I'm getting more of like a sweetness. I feel like that's what I'm picking up the most.
Okay, so now as we lift this up to our faces,
only one of my nostrils ever works. So
anyways.
Today it's the right side.
Okay, so with your mouth open, and inhaling very slowly, just start to bring this up to your face, up to your nose, and as that alcohol burn thing starts to get fairly intense, just back it off a little bit, and that's going to be your sweet spot. It's usually not nose all the way down in the glass.
Okay, are we breathing or is it like static?
We're breathing.
Okay.
We're breathing, but slowly, because if you go too fast and you accidentally burn your nostrils, we'll be done for today.
Are you supposed to breathe out through your mouth and your nose at the same time, or?
Yeah.
Wow,
Okay,
I
sorry.
don't
I'm like, I had to do it myself.
I don't know if I can do that.
And just think about it. Just as you're breathing in. Okay, so
So I never
I'm getting
reached.
some like butterscotch.
I never reached a point where like the vapors were too much.
Okay, and some might not. So what is this guy? It's only
I think it's
46.5%. So
I thought it was only 80 proof, so it's a little bit more than I thought.
Yeah, it's a little bit. Yeah, 46.5.
Definitely, I do smell the sweetness. It sounds dumb to say when you're talking about bourbon, but I smell a lot of the corn sweetness, which I feel like sometimes I don't smell that, which is interesting. This whiskey, this bourbon, if you guys are unfamiliar, has a high rye mash bill. So I guess sort of in the same camp as something maybe like a Bullet or something like that. Still bourbon, but a lot of rye in the recipe.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. It smells the way it does while having kind of that spicy rye kick to it.
Yeah. Okay. So tell me what just on for your experience, what do you smell? Do you smell butterscotch now that I said it? Or no?
I feel like maybe I kind of do, but if I'm being honest, I think it's the color that's leading my brain to think butterscotch.
Well, you taste a lot with your nose, but the rest of your senses are also important as well. Okay, so you said sweet. So what kind of sweet are you getting off of this?
I don't. I'm not picking up necessarily like a specific smell, like like vanilla or anything like that.
But it's toasted, right?
It's like it's like a toasty,
maybe even like a caramel, because caramel is just sugar.
Yeah, I think caramel would be probably the closest. Like I said, I can kind of identify like the corn. Like if you just waved this in front of my nose and I didn't know what it was, I'd probably be like, "Oh, it smells like bourbon."
Yeah.
But that's pretty vague. So yeah, I think caramel would be probably my
caramel. Okay.
The one that I could pick up the most.
Any other fruits, nuts, woods, anything you're getting off of that guy?
I could see a light fruitiness to it.
What kind? Like summer fruits or like dark fruits?
I think like summery kind of fruits, like maybe almost like a little bit of stone fruit, something like an apricot.
Yeah, okay, I can
maybe.
Yep, I can see that. Like a fresh apricot or more like a dried apricot? Or like a toasted or like a roasted apricot.
Almost kind of like a dried
Yep,
one.
I would agree with you. So we got our nose as like a dried apricot and a light caramel.
We should definitely look up the tasting notes on this.
Well, we should. Let's not finish recording and just and check it out and see how close we are. Okay. But see, this is how tasting is derived, right? So you just start somewhere, and we're just drilling down on these descriptor words. Okay, so I think as far as beginning, I think that's great. That's two very distinct. Okay, so now let's take a sip. Don't worry about tasting
Don't
it.
analyze.
Just swallow it. Yep.
Okay.
Just a little bit. Just right through. It's passed all the way down. We're letting it sit. Okay. And now let's take another sip, wash it around, and now start to think about it.
Okay.
Oh, it's important to breathe while you're doing this too. In and out through your nose. Because you'll start to pick up more of those aromas the more you breathe. So now on the tongue, I'm getting straight, almost like corn husk, I would say. Almost like a dried corn husk, like I was running through the fucking corn maze in October.
I might have washed that around my mouth too long. I think I roasted roasted my tongue.
Okay. So there's another method too here, where you can take this and just a little bit, keep it kind of towards the front of your mouth, and then breathe some air over it as well.
So
almost
just in the front?
like fucking aerating it in your mouth. Real snobs tell you don't do that, but for me in tasting, I think that it helps.
Okay, I'll try it.
And then give it a swallow.
Definitely almost inhaled it, so that wasn't good.
Mm.
It is kind of nice just localizing it, like having it just at the front, because, like I said, on the last go through, I just blasted my whole tongue.
Mm-hmm. So on this, for me now, so I'm getting that corn husk. I'm also re-getting some of that caramel is coming back through.
I'm tasting something a little bit more earthy now, more toward the back of my palate. It's I don't, maybe that's just my tongue dying.
No, that's
but
fine.
I feel like
Earthy.
I'm getting. I don't know that I would describe it as nutty, but I'm getting something that's like basic.
Well, so it could. I could see nutty, but nutty as in almost like.
There's gonna be a lot of smacking on this episode. If
There
you're
is.
not watching the audio or the
Yeah.
video for this, I apologize.
But almost like a bag of mixed nuts, right? Those big old
Oh, the big dark ones.
Yeah,
the Brazil nuts.
Brazil nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost Brazil nut like.
Kind of is, or like
it's very basic,
or like an almond that's completely
blanched
void
and
of,
naked.
Yeah, like just void of everything. It's got like
unroasted, raw. Like when we start to make orgeat and we blanch almonds and pop the skin.
Yeah, it's kind of like
before
that.
it's toasted. Yep.
And it's started to work its way toward the front of my palate now. When at first it was kind of just back there, and it's kind of just creeping up.
So now we got a little Brazil nut. We got a little bit of caramel still. I'm still getting some of that corn husk. We're going. Do we taste the apricot? Does it move? Like, what about the mouth feel itself?
So the mouth?
It's not overly oily. It's pretty light.
Yeah.
In general.
I'm not really picking up a lot of the sweet, airy fruitiness that I was getting just from the smell. I'm getting more of the bold.
Yep, this is more nutty. Man. There's a flavor in there that I can't quite
It's got
pinpoint.
that spice, right, from the rye. So you're getting some of that.
What kind of spice? Not like a Christmas spice.
No, not like a baking spice. So when we were tasting the Maker's staves, solo.
Yeah.
There was a couple different ones. There was one that was called Spice, and obviously it had a nice spice to it, but there was 3 different kind of spicy ones, and one of them was very back of the palate, one was very
front of the palate,
and then one was kind of mid.
Yeah. So this isn't like pepper spice, and we're not Christmas spice, and we're not.
It's really just like heat spice.
Gotcha.
Like when somebody would say like, oh, this whiskey's hot, like from the proof. That's almost the kind of spice.
Yeah, and what they're talking about when they say that is that it's literal like alcohol burn. Like the burn kind of overtakes the rest of the flavor.
Okay.
Okay, so we're nutty.
Yeah, it's
not overly caramely.
It's continuing as it just lingers in my mouth. Is continuing.
And this is the finish. Yep.
Yeah, it's continuing to be more and more basic.
Yeah, it's
which might be why people like it in old fashioned so much, because it seems like it's a good like platform.
Single dimensional. It doesn't overly evolve as you continue with it.
Okay.
I would say.
It is really good. Not to say that it's one dimensional in a bad way. It's just the flavor that it has is very. It's singular. It's not like some of these crazy single barrel products that you taste that are just like all over the place, and you're like, how are there so many flavors going on? It's a little bit more refined in that one camp, but it is a good flavor. I like that. Whatever that flavor is, I don't know if I want to call it nutty, but it's whatever that is.
Okay, so that was I feel like that was pretty good for a couple noobs.
Right. So real quick, how would you describe some of these different mouthfeels? Because what I am getting right now is like if I put a little bit of half and half in my coffee and I take a sip of that, and after it lingers for a minute, it's like that milky. Like I wouldn't describe it as oily. I wouldn't describe it as
That's almost like
astringent,
fatty, right? Because you're talking about like a fat lingering around in your mouth.
Yeah, like a lipid layer or something like that. So that is kind of
I think that's fine. I think that's a fine descriptor.
That's what I'm getting.
I'm sure there's probably a proper term for it, but at my current knowledge, I don't know. But I would say that fatty is fine.
Okay. But I do enjoy that mouthfeel though. When we were talking about, which we'll do again, we're going to do an episode. We were just talking about it earlier. We're going to do an episode with a blind taste test for some different spirits, specifically vodka, just because that one comes up all the time. One of the mouthfeels that I really, really enjoy in terms of vodka, I guess, because you've got these different camps, like Kettle One versus like an Absolute, very different styles. I really enjoy the Absolute. I like that it has that...
that has a ton of oil. Like, that is oily.
It has that round,
coats.
oily flavor. I really, really enjoy that compared to some of the other offerings, especially when you talk about doing something like a martini, something really bold with it. I feel like it plays with the vermouth and it just has like a much better mouthfeel, especially being stirred rather than shaken. There's a lot of factors, but that will be an interesting episode. So I think as we continue to do spirit spotlights, we're going to do some sponsored tastings and see what we think. I'll try to keep this this concept of tasting in my mind as I do that and see if I can get better.
Okay, so I have pulled up some guy's blog, and he has tasting notes on here about the Yellowstone Select. It's kind of funny. I, though, think I want to find from the distillery itself.
Some guy's blog.
I didn't want to use it, so I don't want to plug him. Limestone Branch, right?
Limestone Branch Distillery.
Okay. Here's this. So I wanted to get it from them and what they think, since they're the one.
Gotcha. I suppose I could read the bottle too. I don't know what it says.
Well, here. Pour a little bit more for each of us. Now we're going to
go off of what they say.
Yeah, because as people plug things into your brain, it's easier now for you to identify with it too.
Gotcha.
So we might be able to pick some of these up. So these guys' tasting note is actually very short. Okay, so on the nose, it says it's rye spice with soft leathered cherries.
Leathered cherries, wow.
I mean, I'm a little dyslexic, but I'm pretty sure it says leathered cherries.
Oh, it does.
Okay, cool. That's what I thought.
Leathered cherries, wow, that is...
Which, we're not super far off. We were talking about fruit. We were talking about stone fruits in particular, and leathered, that's dried cherries. We were talking about dried apricots, and I think that just comes down to our descriptor.
I just smelled my microphone.
It smells like metal.
I'm going to start talking into my glass and smelling the microphone, see where that gets me.
This is the first glass of whiskey I've had today, too. Okay, so now it says on the palate is smoked caramel, which we were getting a lot of caramel on the nose, and we were getting dried apricot.
Yeah, I don't necessarily get a lot of smoke, though.
I don't either, but I haven't had smoked caramel before, so it'd be interesting to take a little caramel chew and fucking smoke it.
Salted caramel would be amazing.
Oh my God, it would. Okay, and then it says the finish is smoky oak and brown sugar.
Okay, brown sugar, I could see that, yeah. That kind of goes along with our original, maybe I was almost even getting some of that in place of the caramel when I was searching for that earlier. Because I can definitely kind of pick up on some brown sugar.
Okay.
I'm not, I guess I can kind of get the cherry now that I'm prompted.
Okay, so here's distiller.com, which, let's see if they got better notes than that. Nope, that looks like their note. Which is a good resource that
They really are.
Yeah, that we put a lot of stock into those guys. They do great.
Yeah, they have a lot of like that little chart that they do. It's got like fruity, smoky, spicy, like all these different parameters, and it kind of gives you like a flow chart.
Yeah.
I don't know if they do it for absolutely everything, but a lot of the whiskeys have it.
I'm pretty sure this is a platform that you put in input and then it morphs based on all the users that have tasted it. Because on here it says there's 682 tastes up to this point.
Man, I almost, as I continue to smell this, I almost get like a buttered popcorn thing going on. Is that weird?
No, that's fine. It's up to, which I get it. I was talking about fucking corn husks, so you're talking about pop dried corn at this point. So
I guess that's, yeah.
like,
Corn,
here's the deal.
Anything corn makes sense.
It's subjective, but also a little bit objective, and that was a great analogy. We're both getting corn, but it's corn based on our own experiences, but we can still come to the conclusion that it's corn of some kind, just like the fruit, right? As we're seeing other people, it's fruity, but what kind of fruit is it?
Wow, I'm having like, I never thought I'd say this, but I'm having so much more of a experience just smelling it than putting it on my tongue.
Oh, yeah.
Because I get all that alcohol and all that disorienting punch once I actually ingest it, but just smelling it, it's wild. I can't imagine what somebody who can actually smell well is smelling.
So the tasting notes on here for distiller.com, it says light and shy aromas of smoke. Okay. Light and dry aromas of smoke, dry cider and wood greet the nose. On the palate, the cider gains confidence, the wood notes get spicier, and suggestions of burnt sugar emerge. The medium finish reprises the wood and gains additional spice, which is about what we were saying.
Yeah, I don't get a whole bunch of the cider reference.
I don't either, but they're still talking about, it's not a stone fruit at this point, but they're still talking about some kind of fruit.
Yeah, something.
And this is their experience.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty close. My biggest thing is the spiciness really tapers off at the end. Like, so I still have some from that last sip that I just took, but that nice fatty mouthfeel, as we were talking about, almost like eating a piece of salmon or something, like sushi salmon. That starts to overtake everything, and it's really pleasant. Actually, it's like a soft, pillowy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So I guess the takeaway with tasting is that you just have to start somewhere, and it's very subjective to you. Do you feel like you learned a little bit about tasting?
I mean, essentially 25 minutes ago, or however long it's been, I knew very little, and I had never actually tried any of these things.
Yeah.
The only times that I've really been in situations where I could taste something or was with somebody that was better at it than I was, we had already been drinking quite a bit.
Yeah.
I wasn't in the right mindset to like actually say, all right, I'm going to try to do this. Yeah.
And I will say that this is a very intimidating thing, especially when you sit down with somebody that's a quote unquote like a whiskey snob or an aficionado or some wine expert and all this shit. Because there is a little bit of etiquette that goes into it, but I think for the basics. And also fuck those guys for making you feel like a snob anyways, because or feeling like you're an idiot because they're snobby. Like,
they're all hoity-toity.
Dude, it's stupid. You can enjoy shit just as much or more than you actually can enjoy shit, I think, more than they can because of fucking how many rules they put around themselves. At the end of the day, God, it doesn't fucking matter.
Yeah, the only rule is
your taste. It's your experience. Yeah. So like,
which is why there's personal preference, right? Like, if this
That's
stuff
why some
was-
people love this shit and some people hate this
Yeah.
shit.
My dad doesn't like bourbon. It's just too sweet on the palate. Now, granted, I don't think he's tried a lot of them, and I bet you I could put some in front of him that are
He's
much
probably
less.
trying like weeded bourbons and shit like that.
Yeah,
man.
but he's, you know, he hates it. He's just like, oh, it's like drinking maple syrup. He likes rye, he likes scotch, stuff like that. So bourbon is just not his thing. But we also get a bunch of people at the bar that are like, oh, I hate rye. I don't want rye. They're like big time bourbon drinkers. But a lot of the stuff they're drinking
Is like high rye content.
Yeah, it's got quite a bit of rye in there. And so
They just need a little bit of sweetness
Yeah.
to help them go.
Peerless, for example, really awesome rye, but super sweet. It has like a really like nice sweetness to
Yeah.
it. And I have given that to somebody like Tom, who only drinks bourbon.
Yeah.
And before he knew it was rye, he was like, yeah, it's pretty good. Like, it's not like my favorite or whatever.
Yeah.
And then
Tom only drinks Blanton's, mind
Right,
you.
right.
And when he doesn't drink Blanton's, he'll drink Four Roses.
Four Roses, things like that. He's just a total,
not single,
small batch.
Small batch.
he's just a total bourbon guy, which is awesome. That's just where his palate's at. But it was just funny, before he knew it was a rye, he was like, yeah, it's
Yeah,
pretty
no,
good. Like, I
totally.
don't mind it. And then when you're like, oh yeah, that's a rye. And he's like, yeah, I actually don't like that at all. It's like, all right.
But
It's
that's
kind of
your,
like cucumbers for me. Like,
Oh, yeah.
I could eat something that had cucumber in it, although I'd probably know it was there. And I'd just be like, yeah, it's probably fine. And then somebody mentions a cucumber and I'm like, fuck that.
fuck cucumbers. Yeah, that's fine.
I just don't like, I love pickles though. It's weird.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I used to be a very picky eater until I started in kind of this industry. I hated fucking wine when I started.
Yeah.
Hated fucking wine. And all I did, because that's all we did, was sell fucking wine. Every night when I was off, I would go to the grocery store and I would pick a different fucking bottle of wine. I would start with the different varietals. So I would go and I'm like, okay, today I'm going to drink a fucking cab. And I'd get it. I'd read some notes on it. What like cabs are supposed to be like. They're,
You know that?
and I would just drink it. And even though I didn't like it, I would put it in my mouth.
Well-
I would fucking drink it. And I would try to identify what these tasting notes, mouth feels, all this stuff was like. And I'm like, okay. And
Well,
I
it's
wrote my
acquired
own.
taste.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that would actually be a really good idea for something we could do on the show, because we are not necessarily limited to liquor, right? So if somebody's going to host some sort of party or event at their place, there's lots of people that like wine. They might be wondering, what kind of wine should I get? And someone like me, I don't know very much about wine at all. So it might be beneficial for us to do an episode on like reds, an episode on whites,
Yeah.
maybe break it up and get a few different bottles to try, crack them open, taste them, document kind of what we think we're tasting, what's going on, and then maybe do the same sort of thing, look it up, see how
Oh.
close we were.
Super
Um,
rad. Yeah, let's do it.
Maybe even just document like, okay, so like what you told me the other day was really helpful. Never really thought about it like this. We were standing in the store looking at wine. And I was like, man, I feel like wine. And I was like, I like Pinot Noir. I tend to like most of those. And I was in the cab section, and I like some cabs too. But I was looking around and I was like, I don't know if I want cab. I think I'm in the mood for a Pinot. Nick's like, well, Pinot's definitely, typically, a little bit lighter. And I never really thought about it in terms of like lightness, because red wine,
Is red.
it's bold, right? I
Yeah.
mean, you just always think of that. And so that was really helpful, because now I can keep things like that in mind when I drink a red, especially a blend that has different things going on. You can kind of be like, all right, well, how bold is this? And how bold do I want to be right now based on what I'm doing, how much of it I'm going to drink, what I'm eating with it?
Totally. Well, also too, like different regions are known for having like thicker or lighter wines. So like when I'm in the mood for a really light kind of red wine, I do like the Pinots, but also Chiantis are super awesome.
Yeah.
Also,
I always
a
like
lot
Chianti.
of like weird grapes I never even heard of from fucking Italy. They're usually light.
There's so many.
Yeah. As long as you stay out of the Bordeaux region of France, you can get really light wines.
Yeah, for sure. No, I think it's a good idea. I think we should do that. Let us know in the comments if you guys would like to see something like that or anything else for that matter. We're pretty much just at this point going to tackle
Everything we
anything we can think of. So, God damn. On this note, I really like this process, like what's going on here. I think we need to get a couple spirit spotlight / tasting
Yeah.
things going on. But what we should try to do for you guys at home is maybe like a week before we'll announce in some way, shape, or form what spirit we're going to try to do. And we'll try to do stuff that's mostly accessible, like nothing too crazy or rare. And if you guys at home want to follow along with the episode, maybe
that'd be sick.
Snag a bottle, throw it on, and kind of just go along. See if you taste or smell what we're getting. We'll try to come to a verdict without looking up the notes, and then at the end of the episode, we'll look them up and just see how off base we were. I think something like that would be really cool.
Yeah, I'm into it.
We'll definitely start with bourbons, but I'm down to do pretty much anything in that regard.
Well, bourbons are hot right now, so that's good. But
Yeah.
I definitely want to do gins and.
So we just got a new gin in our hands the other day. Well, I don't know how actually new it is. It's newer from what I've seen, but it's called Gunpowder. It's an Irish
Yeah,
gin.
it was that blue bottle, right?
Yeah, really cool looking blue bottle. Almost looks like a giant perfume bottle or something. It was pretty good though, and I think doing a little taste test
Smattering of stuff, yeah.
might be really cool to do for vodka and gin especially. There's way too much variation in rum to capture that in like one setting, but we could definitely break into some different categories. Anyway, let us know if there's something in particular that would interest you. We're going to try to kind of do all this stuff, but if there's other things that you're just kind of aching to get after, we can do those things first and jump into it as well.
Yeah, essentially we're here for you guys, and we want to give you the information that you want to know about. So, yeah.
Wow, it's hot coming back to it.
Yep. Anyways, we're going to keep drinking this whiskey.
Yeah, I'm going to keep tasting this whiskey.
Tasting. Oh, yeah, I heard this before we were gone. There was... I was listening to a bourbon guy on the interweb, and he said, pro tip when you're tasting, if somebody has got you there with a bottle and they're like, do you smell that, like, or taste that hint of caramel and stuff, and all you have to do is drink it and go, I don't know, I'm almost there, give me a little bit more. And then caramel, man, I think okay, I just need a little bit more.
Yeah.
Pro tip,
just
lead them on.
Yep. Those are wise words right
Those
there.
are wise words. Anyways,
more tips like that coming your way.
Anyways, thanks for listening, guys.
Yeah. We'll see you on the next one. Let us know what you want to see. Cheers.
Cheers.